gives us something to talk about. How about Arsenal? We mentioned Nico Williams before, and Arsenal were linked with him for quite a while. That seems to have gone cold. It seems to be Barcelona possibly for him.
It's just an expensive deal to make happen. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The release clause isn't that high, but when you look at the overall package with the agency fee, the wages, the bonuses, the signing on fee, it's an expensive one.
Yeah. There's another player, though, that Arsenal have been linked with for even longer. Now, tell me Arsenal are close to completing their first signing of the summer.
They are getting close. Martin Zubimendi nearly joined Liverpool last summer because they activated the release clause, but the player opted to stay in Spain for another season. He's in London at the moment, just finalising that deal, speaking to Arsenal, going through all the final details of that contract. We understand it's a £51 million release clause, which Arsenal have activated. It's only a matter of time.
About Rodrigo. Rodrigo, who didn't play for Real Madrid yesterday, and many questions about Arsenal. Guys, I'm told that the situation has not changed as of today. So, first point, Arsenal love Rodrigo. When I say Arsenal, is about the management, is about the coach, Mikel Arteta. They consider Rodrigo as a fantastic player, a dream target as a winger, also because they believe that Nico Williams is impossible to reach this summer. So for Rodrigo, he remains a strong name for sure in the list at Arsenal, but at the moment, as I always told you, the only way to make the Rodrigo deal happen and to start thinking about the financials, the salary, the transfer fee and all the rest is Rodrigo himself. The only way is if Rodrigo goes to Xabi Alonso and tells him at some point, now in 1 week, in 2 weeks, in 2 months, I want to leave the club. So is Rodrigo deciding? If Rodrigo decides to go, for Arsenal, doors of this deal to negotiate could be open. But in this moment, Rodrigo still didn't tell anything to Xabi Alonso about leaving the club, about leaving Real Madrid. And Real Madrid will not inform Arsenal on any fixed price until they don't have any communication from Rodrigo. They are giving Rodrigo time to have his feeling with Xabi Alonso. They are giving also Xabi Alonso time to understand what he wants to do with Rodrigo. So this World Cup is probably the opportunity to start feeling what they want to do with each other, but in this moment there is no concrete negotiation. There is interest from Arsenal for sure, loving the player, but to understand if they will start a proper negotiation, we have to wait and see what Rodrigo himself.
With Arsenal and 2 significant reports to digest. First of all, in Portugal, coming in from Portugal CNN and others, that Arsenal are preparing their first bid for Viktor Gyokeres. This is hot on the heels of a story coming out of the Mirror in the UK that Arsenal could back out of a £70 million transfer for Benjamin Sesko because of the Slovenian international's wage demands. Gyökeres is the backup plan. So look, it's been sort of a balancing act for Arsenal, and many Arsenal fans have been having this debate for what seems like weeks. Do you go Gyökeres? Do you go Sesko? The belief has always been that for over a year now, Mikel Arteta has wanted Sesko, but obviously a new director of football in Berta came in just after the January transfer window, and he will want to make his own statement as well. What's right for Arsenal, Gyökeres or Sesko, is very much open for debate. Let me know your comments in below. There's pros and cons of both. I think that, as I've said many times, you should give Arteta what he wants, but financially, it could well be that Gyökeres is the cheaper deal. But remember, if you were Chelsea, you'd go for Sesko because Sesko's under 23 and you've got that longevity and value. If you pay £70 million for somebody in their early 20s, but you pay £60 million for somebody who's 27, there is more market value and efficiency in going for the younger player. But really, when you're Arsenal and you're trying to win the league this season, you go for the player that's going to make the biggest instant impact. And I believe if Gyökeres can replicate anywhere near his form in Portugal in the Champions League, then the chances of him hitting the ground running are very, very big. Having said that, Sesko has scored goals where he's been. And Leipzig didn't have a great season last year, but he did score goals. And who is more suitable to an Arteta system? Does an out-and-out striker suit an Arteta system, or do you need to be more intricate and technical, in which case, even though he's tall, maybe Sesko suits better? So it's going to be very interesting to see, because some Portuguese reports are actually saying that Arsenal are going to go in with a second bid for Gyökeres. They've never had a first bid. And that sort of evidences the quality of Portuguese reports. I mean, as a Man United fan, I remember we were signing Gayton, the Argentinian, a few years ago, every week for about 3 years. We never, ever, ever put a bid in. So they can sort of run wild with theories. And a second bid for Gyökeres is amazing when you skip the first bid. But they are saying over there that a bid is imminent from Arsenal for Gyökeres. And it feels like there is some truth in Arsenal finally making a decision on which way they're going to go. Pre-season isn't that far away. And Arteta needs this player implemented from day one in the biggest of seasons for Arsenal when Liverpool are doing what they've been doing over the last few days, which is nothing short of fantastic. So let's wait and see. Give your comments on that. Do you think it's time Arsenal are going to go for Gyökeres?
That both of them will arrive at the club.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the reports this morning suggested it was the personal terms that hadn't been agreed between Arsenal and Sesko, but you're saying actually that's not probably the problem. It's actually the deal between Arsenal and Leipzig.
Yeah, I think Benjamin Sesko is keen on Arsenal. 12 months ago, he had two considerations. One was he going to stay at Leipzig for another season? And that ended up being his decision. The second was which of the pitches was the strongest and which terms were acceptable. And 12 months ago, there was Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester United. And Sesko basically picked the Arsenal project, but then decided he was going to put it on ice and wait a year. Then when Arsenal returned in January because they had need for a striker, Sesko and Leipzig again said no, nothing was possible mid-season. And now Arsenal are determining if they revisit that deal, because remember at that point it was work done by Edu and later Jason Ato. Now it's Andrea Berta who's brought Viktor Gyokeres to the table. And his style, like I said before, is not to meticulously work on one target and just bank on getting that player. It's actually to leverage two targets or more against each other. Because right now, Sporting may be saying it's not the 100 million release clause for Gyökeres, but we want 80. And Leipzig may be saying Benjamin Sesko has a release clause, we want that 80 million, simply because there's so much time left in the window that the selling club has a lot of advantage. Whereas Berta's perspective is you can drive the Sesko price down if they want to go in that direction. And if player buy-in is there, the Gyokeres situation may eventually result in this pact being honoured, which means the player can also leave for 70 million euros. But it's not really been an Arsenal thing going to Sesko and pre-agreed terms, because first they have to decide if they're going to go for Sesko or Gyokeres, and that determination is most likely to be based upon which price Arsenal actually think is value for money. And that's the part with both clubs that is currently being worked on and explored.
So when you say that they're looking at both players and sort of working on both deals and seeing what works, do you feel like Sesko is the main priority and Gyökeres is perhaps a backup option, or are they just keeping their options open at this stage and they haven't put a number one as a target?
I think the feeling heading into the window was that Benjamin Sesko would be the priority, but obviously Andrea Berta has changed that somewhat, and now it is fair to say, as frustrating as it may be to Arsenal fans, that both deals are simply being explored, and day on day we get asked for updates. But again, I don't think Arsenal feel they need to force this one through one way or the other right now. It may be a transfer, even though number 9 is a key priority, that they're happy to put on the next financial year, which is why we've had to wait a little bit for clarity, which is expected to come soon. But I think Arsenal were always thinking of their number 9 as kind of a July the 1st deal or onwards, and that's more preferable to put this kind of outlay into the next financial year. In addition to that, Arsenal are not in the Club World Cup. They don't have that same urgency to move as maybe Chelsea or Manchester City. Liverpool is a different scenario because they've been planning for quite some time. Richard Hughes has been in for longer, and I think they knew the kind of players that they thought they could move decisively on. And people will say, why can Liverpool spend this kind of money and Arsenal haven't yet? And there's probably two answers. The first is that at the end of the window, let's actually see whether Arsenal's spend is that far off Liverpool's total spend, because if you add Zubimendi